Good afternoon, Muskegon. Hi, this is Gregory T. Roberts, your host of Torn Into, your source for news and information. Stay tuned. Hold on to that little bit, that nugget, because we have an exciting announcement to make later during the show. My special guest host today, you see him frequently because I trust him a whole lot, and I know he's watching too. It's Pastor Melvin Burns. How you doing, sir?
I'm just fine. How are you today?
I'm doing well. You looking wonderful.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
All right. It's 39 degrees outside on this March 5th, 22. Your source for news and information. Next week, Chief Jeffrey Lewis will be on the show. Also, I know a lot of people are listening by car on 103.7 or M106, but if you want to get involved in the conversation today, excuse me, go to Facebook, WVS 103.7 Facebook page, or M106. A lot of stuff to talk about today. So let's break the glass, blow away the smoke, and get to the issues.
Oh,
Our guest today needs no introduction, and his bio is extensive. So we're gonna let him talk a little bit about that. Is the city manager of Muskegon Heights, Mr. Troy Bell. How you doing, sir?
Doing well, doing well.
Welcome to the show. Well, let's start and let's get right after it. Why don't you tell people a little bit about your background?
Wow, thank you very much. So I come from a military background. My father served 36 years in the Army. My mom was a special education teacher for 34 some odd years, and some of the roughest school districts around the country.
Mm-hmm.
My father retired as a one-star general, and our upbringing was community service, public service, from start to finish. I started off as a graduate of University of Miami as the first African American student body president there, and continued on in engineering. My core degree is in mechanical engineering, but I also have degrees in economics, finance, sociology, with an emphasis on criminology.
I believe your GPA was a 4.0 and you were on Dean's list.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Several times. So.
Well, I think you're going to do the interviewing today.
yeah, we're gonna move to the back seat right now.
Hey, we were in the back row of the school. You sat in the front. Anyway, I'm
if we
sorry.
add our GPAs together, we can get a 4 probably.
Y'all too much. But
So
yeah,
anyway,
that's
go
where
ahead.
I started, and didn't have enough money to pay for school, so I worked as a police officer while I was going through school. University of Miami, it's a private school, it's expensive, so that was my first exposure to real public service in local government, and it was a way of paying for my tuition. But it really opened my eyes to some of the challenges.
So let me get that again, and let me see if you can repeat that again. It was an expensive school. You had to work. You had to work to get that done. Please tell the people today about that right there.
Yes, sir. So you got a goal, you have an objective. Where there's a will, there's a way. And when money came up short, between books and living expenses and tuition, the best way I could figure out to do it was find a full-time job that I could work at night and still go to school during the day. So that to me was law enforcement, and so that's the road that I took. Not thinking it was a career, but it was a means to an end.
Mm-hmm.
And so I averaged about 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night for a couple years stretch there.
Wow.
Yeah, I look back on that now and said you think you can't do something until you do. And that was one of the adages in our house. There's no such word as can't. But looking back on it, I'm glad I did it when I was young. And I'm not trying to do it again.
Right. That's a young man's game. It's only by the grace of God.
By the
With the
grace
yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, Mr. Bell, how did you this profession of city management? Where in your academic or professional career did you first decide you wanted to go in that direction?
Well, ironically, working as a police officer, my aspiration as an engineer was to go overseas and build infrastructure for third world countries, specifically the motherland, to be able to help them improve their conditions. And what I realized from my work as a police officer is that there's so much that needs to be done here at home. And law enforcement, at least in my experience, I realized was dysfunctional in many regards.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of the guys that I work with, I graduated with 44 guys in the academy, really good people. But I didn't realize until I applied that in order to be a police officer, you only needed a high school education. And so a lot of these guys, smart guys, some of the smartest people that I know, but just hadn't been exposed to higher education, hadn't been exposed to a world that was bigger than themselves. A lot of them were high school athletes, and they transitioned from not making it into college to making it into the police department. And so their view of the world was very small. And that created a lot of the issues that we're now talking about today in terms of the mindset and the mentality of law enforcement officers when they go into the field. And so I had some ideas as a kid that was studying criminology in college, and when I expressed those ideas, it wasn't taken very well.
We don't do that.
No, exactly. So all the science says this, and then all these books say that, and they said you need to forget about those books. So I found myself in the police office and getting a lecture about I'm the chief of police, and you need to do what you're told. And somebody like you will never be chief of police.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
My mother will tell you, if she was still here today, the last thing that you should ever tell me is that you can't do something.
Hello. Repeat that again, please.
The last thing that you should tell me is that you can't do something.
Okay.
And that goes for all of our kids. You have to have that aspiration in order for it to even have an opportunity to become reality. So I went home that day and I did my research of what it would take to become the chief of police. And in that research, I realized who hires the chief of police.
Okay.
And that was the city manager.
Okay.
So I said, you know what? I could grind my wheels for the next some odd years,
Okay.
become the chief of police, or I could set my sights on becoming the person that hires the chief of police. So the next day, the chief bumped into me, or I bumped into the chief, and he said some kind of small talk. And I said, you're absolutely right about me not being the chief of police, but I will be one day the guy that hires the chief of police.
Okay. All right.
That's it. One day I will be your boss. Yeah.
Oh, good. Why don't you, I'm sure you still find that you start to enlighten people on what this profession, city management, is. I remember writing a letter home to my parents when I was in grad school, like about 2-page letter, like this is what I'm actually planning to do with my life. So why don't you, for our audience, and just maybe there's some younger people listening, why don't you tell people a little bit about this profession and what it takes and what kind of mettle you have to get into it.
Sure, and I find that it is an honor and a privilege to be a member of this profession and to follow, particularly in your footsteps as a former city manager.
Thank you.
So you have the mountain of wisdom and experience that I hope to and aspire to have at some point in time. But what I found beautiful about this profession, and by the time I was 27, I had held at least 21 elected positions.
Wow.
In my lifetime.
And
at what age?
At 27.
And you had like 21 elected positions.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, y'all better listen.
And And that comes out of that. If you see something wrong, you have a responsibility to do something about it before you complain about it. That's the way I was raised, and so
Nice.
that is the core foundation of leadership. You take the initiative to do something about it, and so that found me in elected positions on several occasions in the effort to be able to be the change that I wanted to see.
Mm-hmm.
um, what I realized in those experiences that there's a certain aspect of politics that go along with that. And you find yourself in situations many times where you're being asked not to do what you know to be the right thing because it may not be the politically expedient thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or those people who assist you in the process of getting to the position that you want to hold then feel that they have a certain amount of power and authority over you. And so when I did my research about city management, I realized that here was an opportunity to be able to use the tools that God gave me to be able to manage and administer government without the political aspect of it. And so city management, by definition, is apolitical. It's not Republican, it's not Democratic, and it's not an elected position. It
Mm-hmm.
is an appointed position in most cases, and it is charged with the responsibility to do the right thing, the responsibility to administer the professional aspects of city operations. And so it is a truly fulfilling profession in that you get to do the people's work. And
Now, I got a question for you.
Mhm.
Talk to people about settling. I can settle for this job,
Mhm.
but that job over there, that's where I really should be,
Sure.
which you did. Talk to people about that, please.
Well, yeah, are you talking about the opportunity that came up instead of the opportunity at the city of Muskegon Heights?
You break it down any way you want to break it down.
Sure. So, what really attracted me to the city of Muskegon Heights, and we didn't get into the other aspects of my background, but I've also served as a school superintendent and saw the value of being able to be a direct part of educating our kids, but also the challenges associated with not being able to affect the parameters that are most relevant to the successful education of our kids, which is poverty, access to health care, all these other factors that come under the purview of a city manager. So when the opportunity came for me to get back into city management, I jumped at that opportunity. What
Mm-hmm.
attracted me to Muskegon Heights was the challenges around our education system, the recent conversion of the school district into a charter school district, which I'm very familiar with that model, and also the challenges associated with the distressed elements of our community in Muskegon Heights. The opportunity to be in an environment where those two issues were at the forefront and those two issues are in my wheelhouse, to be able to do something for my community was an intoxicating opportunity. Let me put it that way. Throughout my career, I've done a number of projects and undertakings that people said could never be accomplished, could not be done, and particularly in majority white communities. And so that success, I always dreamed about being able to bring that success, that knowledge base, to a majority minority community, a majority community of color, because we deserve to have those same quality of life elements that every other community has. And
Work.
so,
Wow.
yes, I had an opportunity to take a position that would have paid me 3 times what I'm being paid here in California, and that's not where my heart was.
I'm looking at some of the people you work with, Governor Romney, Governor Patrick,
Mhm.
doing all kinds of stuff.
Yes, sir.
Talk about a little bit about that.
So I was blessed to be able to do a stint with IBM and their state and local government sector, and that was focused on developing solutions, technology solutions for government entities. And my group was the complex solutions group, which meant that we work with any solutions that involved hardware, software, and services bundled together.
Mm-hmm.
So that uh, arena took me to Massachusetts when they were first beginning to talk about universal health care. We have Affordable Care Act today. Universal health care in Massachusetts was the precursor
Mm-hmm.
to the Affordable Care Act. And so under the Romney administration, the legislature passed and approved Universal Healthcare Initiative. And that required a huge transition in the technological infrastructure in the state of Massachusetts. So in my capacity with IBM, I had an opportunity to participate in developing the footprint for technology for that initiative. Now, we all remember, well, I shouldn't say we all. Some of us who are old enough will remember when the when that Affordable Care Act went live, the website crashed.
Yeah.
That was and for good reason, because they had some significant challenges. But my group, the team that I led, basically created the website and the interface for the Universal Healthcare Initiative that went live and did not crash for the state of Massachusetts. So it was a huge undertaking. I had an opportunity to work with Governor Romney through this process, and there's some interesting stories about that. But to be able to work with Governor Patrick and the implementation of it was a huge honor and privilege. And I learned, I knew nothing about insurance and healthcare, but I sure did learn a lot.
Okay.
Right. You talk about, 4.0 in school, police officer, wanting to be someday a police chief, looked at I could do better. You've worked for Patrick and Romney. You bring a full gamut to Muskegon Heights. Now, how does one take all that information, those transferable skills, and make Muskegon Heights a better city?
Well, I will tell you this. What I've learned in my experience is that your solutions have to be multifaceted. They have to be comprehensive in nature if you're going to resolve deficiencies. Um, and one of the things that plagues our communities and communities of color is that we approach our challenges one off. Now, we as a people, the African diaspora, come from a people that are community-based people. I mean, that is our culture. Our culture is about working together. It's about collaborating. That's in, if you want to put it, for lack of a better term, it's in our DNA. And when we migrate to the United States, which is a Western culture that is very compartmentalized, that puts our community culture in stress.
Mm-hmm.
Now, yeah, we can navigate that, we can survive that, but it is not our sweet spot. So you take us, a city that is economically challenged and economically distressed, that doubles the challenge of us trying to come out of that state and to be able to prosper and thrive.
Mm-hmm.
The solution is got to be multifaceted. It's got to be comprehensive. You have to break down the silos between healthcare, between education,
Mm-hmm.
between the business community, the faith community, and local government.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I mean, you can look at several communities that are trying to bring themselves out of economic distress, particularly communities of color, and you'll see these solutions, great solutions that are working independent, not collaboratively, not multifaceted, not across the board.
Okay.
And so what I feel makes me particularly equipped in this role is the diversity of my background, having been a law enforcement officer, having worked in technology, having been in education at the highest level, having a background in sociology and in business. All those diverse elements allow me oftentimes to be able to analyze things on a root level and be able to see how all the pieces fit together to come up with a multifaceted, comprehensive solution. And it's just a matter of getting people together to work collaboratively across those silos that will allow us to thrive and survive.
Okay.
How about you have all those solutions in your mind that you want to do, but you have to take it to a commission to talk about those ideas?
Well, that is the way our democracy works, and one of the beautiful things about council manager form of government in this form, and Mr. Burns was alluding to this. I have the city manager that works as the CEO of the city, so to speak, who's responsible for administrating, but you have a council that's responsible for developing the broad policies, the broad vision of how the city is the direction that the city is supposed to go in.
Mm-hmm.
It's my responsibility as the city manager to execute on that vision, to be able to pull the pieces together so that we can achieve that vision.
Mm-hmm.
And so bringing these ideas forward, critical to that success of being able to bring these ideas forward is the ability to gather information, provide information that supports the logic of pursuing, and whether it be a cost benefit analysis that says if we do this versus that,
Mm-hmm.
it will save us money, or this is more effective or more efficient than this approach, to be able to provide them with that data and information so that they can make an informed decision to support moving in a particular direction. So,
Mr.
Okay.
Burns, you got a question?
Yeah. Now we only have one city manager. We only need one, and we have 7 council people, and their slots are all full. So this is a political show, and everybody wants to be involved in making decisions. What are some ways some of our citizens can get involved in making decisions in our community?
that's a very good question, and I appreciate you asking that, because it is at the core of what I was talking about. This cannot be achieved, and when I say this, reaching the vision cannot be achieved, and we call it, we've been coining it, reaching new heights, or reaching Muskegon Heights. Cannot be achieved just by individual action. It's got to be a collaborative action. And so we have in Muskegon Heights a very active community. It's just a matter of focusing all that action and that activity in a positive direction behind a common vision and goals. So there are committees that you have an opportunity to participate in, to be part of a committee, whether it be a council committee, or whether it be a committee of the
Like planning?
Yes. And in most cities, and this is something that I would like to bring back to the table, you also have a committee that oversees Parks and Rec.
Mm-hmm.
You have a citizens committee that is involved with working with the schools and the library system. You have an oversight committee that's involved with the Public Works Department and the beautification of the community. So there's several ways that we can channel community involvement through community activity. Not to forget to mention neighborhood associations.
Right.
There's been a lot of work done by members of the community to develop community associations. We actually have 7 defined in Muskegon Heights, and getting active and involved in the community association at the root level is a marvelous way to become involved. But what I like about the committee idea is it gives you a chance to be able to see how local government works. You get to be part of that process. You get to be part of developing the information that is shared across local government. And in many cities, it's a precursor or prerequisite to becoming part, to even running for council, that you have to show your involvement on these types of committees to show that you have an understanding of what the inner workings are of government. And what I intend to do, given permission from the council, is put together or continue to put together a citizens academy that would allow folks to come in over a 6-week period, maybe an hour a week, and go through the basic elements of the way local government works, the way manager government works, and to get an understanding of how we put the budget together. For instance, when we started paving Sherman, there were a lot of folks that were not happy about paving Sherman because there are, quite frankly, several roads that needed much more than Sherman. Can we all agree on that? Right. But not realizing that the state had awarded a grant for $3 million that could only be used on Sherman.
Sure.
Several folks were upset about that.
Right.
But
right.
had they had an opportunity to participate in the budget process, participate in committees associated with that, that's information that they would have been privy to and to be able to understand why those types of decisions are made.
Question from Michael Smith says, has anyone explored private business tax abatements to bring jobs to the city without mandates? We need local job creation for our tax base to grow. Then services can be provided to residents. What do you think about that?
Yes, and that's an excellent point, because he's obviously drawn the connection between tax revenue and services. And so in order for us to improve the quality of life, we have to improve the tax base. And by improving the tax base, that's more revenue. And with more revenue, we can do more things with that. And tax abatement is one of those tools. I believe at this point, the thing that we need to focus on is our competitive advantage. And some people would say it is our disadvantage, but the key to accelerated growth is being able to take negatives and turn them into positives.
Okay.
And that's when I say that, I'm referring to the number of vacant lots that we have in our community. So many of our sister and brother communities are already built out, and there's no opportunity for infill unless you begin to build up. We have over 800 vacant lots in our community. So the opportunity for new construction to build new is our competitive advantage.
Mm-hmm.
The tax base would accelerate exponentially if we begin building new houses. We haven't built new houses by and large since 2004. I know we had a couple of houses that were built in 2014, but the majority of our housing stock is almost 100 years old. 1927, that time frame is the majority of the age of our housing stock. So we need to take advantage of these vacant lots to build new structures. Because as those existing structures age, it's going to cost more and more and more money to keep them in good condition.
Right. He said infrastructure grants are not enough. Thank you, Michael Anthony Smith.
Absolutely.
Mr. Bell, I want to address what you've talked about the vacant lots. I want to talk about how do you break the negative stereotype that people have with Muskegon Heights, when most Muskegon Heights people go to work, get up, go to work, want best for their children, come home, repeat cycle, Sunday go to church, and just repeat cycle. Most of your people are hardworking people, but yet this negative stereotype, how do we break it?
Well, I think part of our challenge is blight. The appearance of our community creates a negative stereotype. The dumping that goes on, the trash that you see on the ground, and the majority of that comes from people who don't live in our community, that feel that there's no accountability for coming into our community and finding sites where they can dump, where they think that they can get away without being seen or being caught. That's one aspect that we need to target, and we've begun to work on that. 1037 has assisted us by putting up a cash award for information that leads to the arrest and prosecution of anyone that's caught dumping in our community. But it's also working with our business community to get them to understand that they have a responsibility to keep their premises clean on a regular basis. the party stores that we have, Family Dollar, they are doing good business, and they need to police their premises and keep them clean. So that is one of the perceptions that we have to address. And then this idea of crime. Again, the majority of crime that we deal with is not perpetrated by people who live in our community, but by people who come from outside the community.
By the way, I want to congratulate you guys on the crime, because you guys you solved every murder last year.
And that's a fantastic statistic. And the only way that we can beat that is by eliminating those crimes to begin with. But by solving them, we're letting people know that there's accountability. You can't do these types of things and feel like you're going to be able to get away with it without repercussions. And so the police department has done an amazing job in that regard. The chief, the former chief, and the interim chief, all part of that process of rebuilding our police department. And we're currently undertaking a new program to hire reserve officers from the community. And so with the goal of hiring at least 15 reserve officers and 15.
Now, what would those reserve people do?
So reserve officers are fully certified officers that, as a result of us sponsoring them through the academy, agreed to provide community service as part of their commitment to the city for a 3-year period. And so those officers would be used to backfill slots that are open when officers are off because of vacation or because of sickness, as well as what I would hope to focus on is engagement, community engagement. And that's why we're working to recruit people from the community, send them through the academy, because the last person that we recruited from the community to go through the academy was the interim chief Sane. So it has been 20 some odd years. He's the last one. And so the opportunity to bring people in from the community who have a love for the community and an understanding of the community is critical to our success. But that is why we want to put them out into the community to do community engagement. When I was an officer, one of the programs that I loved participating in, it was a requirement that we all spend an hour a week reading in the reading program in the elementary school. So every officer had an elementary school where they would go in an hour a week, whether it was a Monday or a Wednesday or Friday, and spend an hour reading with elementary school kids. And that helped us develop a rapport. It allowed us to not only know the kids, but also to know their families and develop that relationship that was the basis to build trust in the community.
Mr. Bell, but you keep hitting on something that Pastor Melvin's talking about, and you're talking about, is how important is it for people to get involved in the city?
It is. I can't overstate how important that is, because the community, this city is here for the community. And if the community embraces it, continues to embrace it and get involved and activated, then everybody is accountable. I mean, we've heard the adage that it takes a village. And that's essentially what I'm talking about when I talk about the African diaspora. I mean, we are a community, and if we are involved and engaged, we are knowledgeable, we have understanding that's generated from that involvement, and we also have an opportunity to get to know each other, to develop that trust that is associated with communities and neighborhoods and streets and blocks, one block at a time.
Mr. Burns.
Well, that's a lot of good stuff here, Mr. Bell. I know, like everybody, the last year you've been, everything went off the rail when COVID started.
Yes, sir.
Tell me, I know I've observed some of the meetings, and I could be wrong, but it seems like it introduced a new dynamic in terms of people with Facebook, people interacting with city government over the internet. How has that kind of changed how you've done city government over the last year?
It has represented a significant change for positive reasons and for negative reasons.
Okay.
If I can be honest,
Sure.
it is an entirely different. It's like asking a comedian to stand up in front of an audience. I mean, stand up in front of an empty auditorium and perform.
Okay.
That lack of interpersonal interaction
Yeah.
is a challenge.
You gonna get me started? I ain't scared of you. Never mind.
Yeah.
I,
Come on, bring it on.
beep 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 beep. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. And so that's been difficult, and I mean, it, like you said, it was right on the heels of me coming to the city, so it's been a challenge to start as a new manager in a new city with a crisis dumped into your lap with
Sure.
But in terms of the meetings, the lack of the interpersonal interaction has really changed the dynamic of those meetings. There's so that's a challenge that we've had to work through. Aside from the technology issues, you know, you can't depend on. We use Zoom, and it's not 100% foolproof. We've been struggling with issues of sound and people being able to hear. You know, and that's an important piece of being able to conduct a meeting. Everybody's got to be able to hear what's being said and what's going on in order to be able to participate.
Sure.
And in a positive aspect, by being able to broadcast it, I think on some levels it makes it accessible to people who otherwise would not have had an opportunity to see it. On a negative side, though, you're seeing something that's not really the way government was intended to work. So it's kind of a false image of what government or what the city, the way the city conducts business. And some people would call it a lazy man's way of being active, because you gotta get in, you gotta press the flesh, you gotta be around people and rub elbows. But unfortunately, in the name of survival, because of COVID, we can't do that. And so I'm looking forward to the day when people can come back in, because I think you get a much richer experience from that.
Sure.
And then finally, I would say watching local government over a screen does not do it justice from the standpoint of understanding the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes.
Right.
Very good point.
And you know, the business of government happens you know, Tuesday through Sunday, and Monday is when you know, the research, the information, the data. Monday is when the decisions are made, and you miss the opportunity. And this is going back to what you said about being active, involved in committees and such. That gives you an opportunity to be involved in the actual business of developing information, gathering information, decision-making processes that are then brought to the council for their final and ultimate decision. You miss all of that. And so, you know, when we get out of, you know, God willing, the COVID era, it'll be great for people to see that, you know, the council meeting is not intended for questions and answers and research, because that stuff is supposed to be done before we get into the meeting.
Correct.
That stuff is, so instead of tuning in and seeing a litany of questions about this, that, and the other, people will have an opportunity to get involved in answering those questions the day after as soon as the meeting ends and before it begins. That's when all of that work typically goes on.
Mr. Bells, let's back that up, because I think a lot of people don't understand what happens. Okay, a package gets delivered to the council person. They do their research. You guys have a work session. Then you guys have a meeting. And I think a lot of people don't understand. They come to that meeting ready with a shotgun to go full blast. No pun intended on a full blast. But in City Hall, no, sorry about that. But then they come with something they want to talk to instead of being at the work session.
Right. Yes, and even before the work session, there's committee meetings. The council meets as various committees, and there's work that's done in the council committee meetings. And so the engaged citizen would want to be involved in those committee meetings, because that's when the research and the information sharing and the questions are answered. And so the way the system is designed to work is council members are divided into committees. Each committee has responsibility for an aspect of the city government. They have agenda items in the committee meeting. The committee does research and investigation on issues, and then makes a recommendation to the work session. The work session is an opportunity of all the council members to come together to dig in deeper on those recommendations that come from the committee.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives them a chance to learn. And then the interceding weeks between the work session and the actual business session is a further opportunity for people to ask questions, do research, gather information, and then come to the meeting ready to make a decision. And so I would encourage the residents and the community members to reach out to the city manager's office to get copies of the agenda, to be able to and it's on our website when the council committee meetings are, so that you can participate in those council committee meetings and actually get into the nitty gritty of the work that's being done and the gathering of the information and the decisions that are being vetted at that level before you get into council meeting. Council meetings are intended for people to express their opinion one way or the other, their educated opinion one way or the other on an issue. Not
wait a minute, hold on. That's not an oxymoron, that educated opinion.
I thought you were gonna let me slip by with that.
I haven't been to that meeting yet, but
sorry about that. Go ahead.
And you know, in several communities, you know, you might get run out of a meeting if you come in and ask questions that everybody else has already done their research and had answers to, because it is incumbent upon you as doing your job as a citizen to do the research before you come to the meeting, to reach out and ask questions. And I tell people, you know, send us an email, call City Hall, call the city manager's office. We are happy to entertain those questions and answer questions before we get into the meeting. But you come into the meeting with that research already done, and you have an opportunity then, based on that knowledge, to express your opinion about it.
Mm-hmm. Another question from Michael Anthony's. Man, you on it today, Mike. We are a city of renters. There needs to be a path to home ownership. Thank you for that.
So that goes back to what I was saying about leveraging our competitive advantage. We began building homes. Right now we are 53% renters, I think, which is
enormous,
extremely high. Mm-hmm. So as we began to build homes again, those homes are designed for home purchase and home buyers. And so with the program that I'm proposing, with developers that are willing to come in and work closely with the city, we're asking them to bring three things to the table. One, we're asking you to bring home buyers assistance, down payment assistance, credit repair assistance, so that we can help get people into homes that are affordable. And then the third thing that we're asking them to bring is mentorship, 1 to 3 years worth of mentorship for those people who are first-time home buyers, to work with them to make sure that they know how to maintain their homes and that they are enhancing the value of their homes as first-time home buyers. So those are the three things that I'm asking developers to bring to the table to build on these vacant lots. And then we've got a second phase of looking at the abandoned structures that we have and incentivizing folks to purchase these structures and renovate these structures based on the commitment to sell them for home ownership as opposed to rentals. We have a number of folks that are interested in getting a property on the cheap, putting a few Band-Aids on it, and getting a renter into them. And that's not going to turn our community around.
Correct.
And if you look at the rents, you know, the average rent is around $800 to $900, and you can purchase a home, a brand new home, for close to $600 as opposed to renting. So when we start getting these new homes on the market, I think people are going to want to move out of throwing away $900 a month that goes into somebody else's pocket and investing that $600 or $700 a month into a property that they own that develops value and equity and wealth. I mean, that is our biggest challenge as people of color, is not income so much, but developing wealth. And wealth comes from the foundation of owning property.
I'd stop right there because I think you have to wind that back up, because there has to be education when it comes down to how do I have a good credit score? How do I protect that credit score?
Right.
What does that credit racial, all that stuff have to do with me to be able to buy a house and to buy a house in my neighborhood? Let's talk about that. And wait a minute. Oh, this is what Mr. Smith said. LOL. After 30 years experience in local government in a city of Houston. All right. Well, you're on the show next week. Go ahead, Mr. Bell.
Yep. So yeah, financial literacy is important, and if the opportunity is not there for our children to learn that financial literacy in the schools, we need to make sure that that information is available and accessible for our citizens as adults. But it is critical, and a key part of financial literacy is understanding how to manage your money, how to manage your credit. And that's why one of the prerequisites if builders want to come in is credit repair. You have to come with a program for credit repair to help. And it's not just fixing your credit. It is understanding how credit worthiness is defined and what you need to do in order to address that and what you need to do in order to maintain that.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not asking for people to come in and do a quick 2-month credit repair and kick you out the door and say you're ready to go. We're asking for them to put together financial literacy over a long-term period, teaching people how to fix their credit, manage their credit, and then continue to improve their credit.
Mr. Burns.
Yeah, I think as you speak of that, Mr. Bill, early on you talked about sort of the challenge and the opportunity of being a community like Muskegon Heights. We could, be in some other communities, and the idea would just be let's sell lots and build homes. But I think you kind of, you highlight there the aspect of being a community like Muskegon Heights where there's more to it than that.
Right.
And there's a line between how much does government do, but we have to do those extra things.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other areas maybe in the community where particularly you find that unique challenge of, you say this of another community, I wouldn't have to do this, but in Muskegon Heights, this is the extra things we have to do. I don't know if anything comes to mind with that kind of code, but things like that come to mind immediately.
Sure. And I talked about the importance of, when we were talking about the reserve officers, the importance of hiring from the community.
Yeah.
That is a good thing for every community. So it's not so much unique to Muskegon Heights, but the value of that in Muskegon Heights is exponential. It is multiplicative because number one, we have an income tax.
Right.
So just to break it down on purely financial level, it makes sense if we hire people who live in our community. Right now, we're estimated to have 3,000 jobs in Muskegon Heights. And 2,800 people commute in to work in those jobs.
Wow.
So that means that only 200 people are estimated to actually live and work in Muskegon Heights. So if you look at our income tax, we get 1% income tax from people who live and work in Muskegon Heights. We only get 0.5% for people who commute in and work in Muskegon Heights.
So the once in my life, I'm a 1%er, huh?
I'm finally a 1%er.
Finally a 1%er.
So it makes clear financial sense, but in terms of the benefit to the community and the pride that it endears in the community to be able to live and work in your community, to spend the 95% of your time in your community because you can live, work, and play in your community. That's huge. That is. And so, some of the things that we've begun to work on is in our contracts, incentivizing, the road contracts, the contractors to hire local. If you look at the ordinance that was put in place for marijuana, for recreational marijuana, there was a huge incentive there for 40% of the ownership to be local. For exactly those purposes, to encourage local participation in the process, in the business process. So it's those kinds of things that I think are, they're going on in other communities, but they have particular value and significance and importance in our community.
Mr. Bell, speak to this, because in every organization, church, city, you have 80 to 90% sitting back and 10 to 20% doing all the work. And there's a lot of opportunities from people to serve, from planning commission. So, whatever. First of all, would you agree with that? And two, how do we change that?
Sure. So, it is a natural phenomenon that 20% are the ones that usually are the breakout that take the leadership role, and that 80% lag behind. I think the way that we combat that, and this was one of the proposals that I talked about when I was going through the hiring process, is and this is a challenge for our community and communities of color, and this going back to what Mr. Burns was asking about, what is unique and different. We need to have a communication infrastructure in place that allows us to communicate with each other better. It used to be our strength was our churches, because it was a place of congregation, and on a Sunday at 11 o'clock, 95% of the community is in one of those buildings. And so if you got the message out to each of those buildings, you were able to effectively communicate information to the entire community. And unfortunately, and I say this because my grandfather was a minister, as that norm in our community has evolved, the ability to get the message out purely through our churches and our congregation has dissipated.
They're not there on Sunday.
Right. And particularly with COVID, that's a huge challenge that we had to deal with COVID. But in other communities, the informal communication network is much more effective and efficient than it is in our community. So if we really want to take our community to the next level quickly, we have to put in place a communication structure that allows us to be able to communicate effectively, to message effectively, and provide trusted information to members of the community. And Facebook, as much as it is exciting, is not cutting it. The website is not cutting it.
Wait a minute, it's all true on Facebook. It must be true.
Oh my goodness!
Lord, don't get me started on that, because I'm
yeah.
So it is a critical element that we need to figure out a way to address. And we don't realize it though, but we are victims when we go onto Facebook, because Facebook is making money off of the fact that we are there.
Sure.
And all the controversies that erupt on Facebook and evolve into much more than they were intended to be. That's just another way for Facebook to make money.
Right.
And I'm not saying that they're encouraging that, but we have to understand when we're involved in that, effectively all we're doing is becoming clickbait for advertisement.
Sure.
Money.
Yeah.
So depending on Facebook as a mechanism for us to communicate reliable, effective, important information, we have to stop that.
Mr. Bell, we gotta end the show. I want you to give your best commercial for why somebody should move or move their business to Muskegon Heights.
So it's difficult to say, because there's so many reasons why it makes sense for you to move your business. We are in the midst of a renaissance, and so any smart business owner would understand that you want to be on the front of the wave instead of on the back of the wave.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, there are particular challenges and risks associated with being on the front of the wave, but with greater risk, there's greater return. And so I would give any potential business owner this solace and confidence that we are changing things. We're paving roads. The next big road that's on the horizon, and I'm going after infrastructure grants now for Broadway. We are in the midst of a visioning plan. And like I said, one of our challenges, you've got a hugely activated community. However, we are not activated behind a common vision. What I'm looking for to come out of this visioning project is a common vision that we can all get behind. So all of that energy is not spread thinly across the community. It's all focused behind a common vision. And so you're going to see rapid change as a result of us developing and defining a visual and content-based vision of what Muskegon Heights should look like in 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
And then finally, I would say, we're getting ready to build some homes and dig some holes in the ground and build some homes. And so if you're a business that is based on commerce and retail, there are going to be some people that are moving into this community for these homes. There are going to be some people that are moving out of rentals into these new homes. And so you're going to see our population increase and jump up. So that commerce opportunity is going to be there. We're in a market now where we're close enough to Grand Rapids. In Grand Rapids, a house for $350,000 in Muskegon Heights is $180,000.
Right.
So we are the potential bedroom community, not only for other areas in Muskegon County, but for the Grand Rapids market as well.
Right. All right. Thank you, sir. You have a show on this radio. What's the show? What time is it? And how can people reach you?
Thanks for the opportunity for a shameless plug. So, right.
So you can get to Mr. Driver's question.
Okay.
About the app. We didn't get a chance to talk about the app.
Gotcha. Okay. We'll come back to that. So 103.7 The Beat, Wednesdays at 2 p.m., Reaching New Heights. So please join us every Wednesday at 2 p.m. We have guests typically every show, and we go through discussion about what's going on in the city. It is an opportunity for you to get to know what you need to know so you'll be in the know.
All right, sir. You have an open invitation to be on the show. Thank you a lot. Thank you so much, Mr. Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Bell.
Okay. All right. So I said, excuse me. I said that there would be an announcement at the end of the show.
You have to drum roll.
We have been challenged to not only be a political show, but to be a news, information, political, one-stop shopping program. And we're going to take that on personally. So that means there's going to be more work for us. But as long as we get to the truth of the matter, that's what we need to do. So I know Mr. Burns is going to join me in doing that, and other people. So you won't be hearing torn into your political show. It'll be torn into your news and local blah, blah, blah. So that's coming up. Don't forget next week, Chief Jeffrey Lewis, Muskegon Police Chief, Public Service Chief. On behalf of Pastor Melvin Burns II and myself, we'll see you next week. Take care and God bless. All right.